The 911 call began at 11:47 p.m. The voice panicked. "She's not breathing. I don't know what happened. Please, please hurry." Then the line snapped. Silence. Nothing. Just static. No address given. No further words. Dispatchers replayed the faint recording. Heart-pounding, terrified sobs. And then, silence. 20 minutes later, county patrol units pulled up to a quiet cul-de-sac in suburban Ohio. The streetlights glowed dimly over two-story vinyl homes, neatly trimmed lawns, and parked sedans. Neighbors stared from their windows. The officers knocked on the door of house number 28, a modest home with beige siding and a burgundy front door. Inside, nothing. No body, no blood, no sign of a struggle. The place looked undisturbed. The living room couch still bore the imprint of someone sitting, a coffee mug on the end table, a dog leash hung by the back door, and a purse sitting on the kitchen counter. But the 911 call's caller was gone. No trace. And inside that house lived, at least on paper, Emily Harper, a 34-year-old registered nurse at a regional hospital in Akron, Ohio. But in reality, the house was rented to someone else entirely. A man, nondescript, polite, quiet, who, by the records, had borrowed the lease under a friend's original name to keep things private. When investigators arrived, they found a neighbor, a 20-something woman named Rachel Price, sitting on her front steps, smoking, shaking. She told them she called 911. She claimed she heard muffled sounds around 11:40 p.m., like thumping, a thud, maybe someone coughing. Then once she had gone back inside, debated calling, and finally did, but never heard anyone respond. She said she knocked the door earlier in the night, around 9:30, and saw a light on, but no one answered. She assumed it was Emily. She didn't know the house was occupied by someone else. The house's tenant, a 39-year-old man using the name Mark Benton, told police later that he had been out. He said he got home after midnight, found the door unlocked, went inside and saw nothing unusual. He was calm, cooperative, had a driver's license, some paperwork. But he refused to allow a full search that night. He claimed privacy rights. Detectives noted the oddness, but without evidence of forced entry, struggle, or a body, there was no probable cause to seize the property outright. The house was secured, but no warrant was issued then. Publicly, the case was filed as an unknown emergency call, suspicious 911, pending follow-up. No official victim, no crime, yet. The next morning, local news picked up the 911 call. Social media lit up. Some residents speculated. Maybe a domestic dispute, maybe a burglary gone wrong, maybe a domestic abuse victim who fled the house. Comments flew. A few people even said they recognized Emily Harper. One neighbor said she'd seen the nurse jogging near the subdivision during the day. Another claimed she exchanged a nod at Walmart on Friday afternoon. Local police released a press statement. A 911 call was received and dispatched, but no crime scene or victim was found. They asked anyone with information to contact the office. 2 days later, a small but determined team of investigators from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, quietly showed up at the subdivision. Their arrival was low-key. A black SUV, 2 agents in civilian clothes, one in a plain jacket with FBI on the inside. Nobody in the neighborhood noticed until they slipped inside number 28, took photos, bagged the coffee mug, bagged the dog leash, collected mail from the box. Officially, they didn't say much. To locals, they said they were assisting with follow-up. But among police and prosecutor briefings, murmurs began. Could this be a missing person case? Why would someone place a 911 call for a nurse, then vanish before EMS arrived? Maybe Benton isn't telling us everything. At this point, they still had no body, no blood, no obvious crime. Yet, the presence of FBI agents in a quiet Ohio suburb raised questions. Over the next 48 hours, investigators tried to confirm Emily Harper's identity. They contacted the regional hospital to see if she was scheduled for a shift. They checked her home address that public records showed, but that address belonged to another city. They called family and friends, but no one answered. Her listed cell phone number was out of service. Her email account had not been accessed in 4 days. There was no activity on her social media. Things got stranger when the hospital reported that no nurse by the name Emily Harper had worked there in over a year. Staff said they had no record of her on the payroll and no recollection of her ever being employed. The hospital administrator told investigators, "We were expecting a staffing gap, but we ran our payroll logs. Nothing." The files initially suggesting Emily was a nurse turned out to be a forged resume, submitted under a name the hospital had on file years before, but belonging to someone else who quit. The forged resume had been submitted with a fake license number. Whoever had used the name Emily Harper had disappeared from all institutional memory. Now it became clear. The missing nurse was likely a fabrication. Whoever placed the 911 call had inhabited a false identity. That realization sent a ripple through the case. There might never have been a real Emily Harper. If so, who was in the house that night? Who made the call? Who, if anyone, was in danger? But investigators had to begin somewhere. The house belonged to Mark Benton, but Benton's paperwork, the driver's license, rental lease, utility bills, had mismatched signatures, slight handwriting differences, and a credit card application connected to a different name. Agents convened quietly in a small makeshift command post at the county sheriff's office, 5 handwritten pages situating the timeline, listing questions, pointing out inconsistencies. By the 3rd day, they obtained a warrant to search the house thoroughly. A search that night found a locked safe bolted under the floorboards in the bedroom. Inside, a small stack of passports and IDs under various names, expired credit cards, a thumb drive with encrypted files, a few photographs. One of them showed the house at night, its porch light on, and someone standing in the doorway. The face was blurred. The file was time-stamped, but the camera's metadata had been wiped. The passports were all fake, different names, different birth dates, different nationalities. None matched Mark Benton. The fingerprints on the IDs belonged to a 42-year-old man from a different state, long since convicted of fraud, now released. That man had reportedly vanished 10 years ago. As dawn broke over the sleepy subdivision, FBI agents processed the evidence. The case file was renamed from Suspicious 911 to Potential Identity Fraud, Kidnapping, Unknown. The safe's contents sent shockwaves. Everything pointed to long-term planning, not a random call in panic. Whoever had been using that house had multiple identities and an unknown history. Late that evening, a detective called the neighbor, Rachel Price. She sat in the small interview room, her face hollow, eyes red from crying. She said, "I was sure it was Emily. I saw her last week at the grocery store. She waved at me. She had short brown hair. She said she was off shift, tired, but she seemed normal. She paused, voice breaking. If it wasn't her, then who? And what did they do? Under pressure, she admitted she'd lied about one part. She hadn't knocked on the door at 9:30. She couldn't remember exactly when. The night was dark. She was upstairs. She remembered footsteps, heavy boots, and a low groan, a sigh. She thought it might be someone drunk outside. She told herself she was imagining it, but something stirred her gut. Later, a dread. That's why she called 911. Together, Rachel and agents retraced the layout. The living room, kitchen, bedroom. The dog leash. Old, dusty, had no hair or DNA on it. The mug had been wiped. No fingerprints. No signs of cleaning chemicals. It was as if the person who stayed there wanted to erase themselves, but not through violence. For now, there was no blood, no struggle, just absence. By the end of the week, media outlets picked the story up. Ohio 911 call at empty house. Who called and why? A small article appeared, then a second. Social media buzzed with speculation. Maybe the caller fled. Maybe the victim was already long gone. Maybe the call was a prank, or part of something darker. But the biggest concern among investigators, the ones flipping through mugshots, ID records, passport files, and phone metadata, was this. Nobody knew who they were looking for. The name Mark Benton might be fake. The nurse may not exist. The woman who made the call might not exist, or might have been coerced. And behind all of it, one question, silent but heavy. Had a crime been committed? Or was this some elaborate disappearance, a careful vanishing, or something even more nefarious? When the lead FBI agent locked the wooden file cabinet that Friday night, he wrote in the case notebook, "Subject unknown, victim unknown, expect worst." But with no body, no name, no crime confirmed, the horror of what might come remained unspoken. The camera pulls away from the suburban street. Lights go off, one by one. The cul-de-sac returns to silence. But inside that unassuming house, identity and truth were dissolving. And something dark was hidden behind an empty 911 call. Darkness, silence, and questions. The case file had just begun. Next, we peel back the walls. Before sunrise, unmarked FBI vans rolled quietly into the cul-de-sac. Agents in plain clothes stepped out, their breath fogging in the chill as they carried equipment toward the beige house at the end of the street. The neighborhood was still asleep when the first dog alerted. It stopped suddenly near the backyard fence, pawed once at a patch of soil beneath new mulch, and sat down. The handler's voice was low. Confirmation. They dug carefully, expecting the worst. What came up wasn't a body, but a bag of shredded hospital paperwork. License forms, staffing rosters, a few pages with smudged logos. Someone had tried to erase a trail. Inside the crawl space, agents found something stranger. A metal box sealed in plastic. When they pried it open, they saw water-damaged Polaroids of hospital corridors, break rooms, nurses smiling at potlucks. In each frame, a woman with brown hair appeared at the edge, wearing a badge that read, "Emily Harper, RN." The dates on the photos were almost 10 years old. The Ohio Nursing Board database confirmed the license number belonged to a nurse named Margaret Hobbs. missing since 2016. Her car had been found abandoned in Toledo. She'd never been seen again. Fingerprints lifted from the safe in the house matched hers. The man who called himself Mark Benton wasn't who he claimed to be. He was a former traveling nurse, Evan Marsh, once accused of harassment by Margaret Hobbs before she disappeared. He had been suspended and vanished afterward. Now, almost a decade later, his trail had led straight back to another woman using Margaret's old alias. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, ordinary. He drove a faded Toyota Camry, waved only when necessary, and took his trash out after midnight. One woman remembered hearing a muffled whimper through the shared wall weeks earlier, but had turned up the television instead. Rachel Price, the neighbor who made the 911 call, confessed that Marsh once offered to check her battery when she mentioned car trouble. She'd let him, later discovered her spare key missing, and changed the locks without reporting it. She'd thought he was lonely, not dangerous. While agents canvassed the street, digital forensics analysts decrypted the thumb drive pulled from the floor safe. Inside were folders labeled by state: Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Each contained fake nursing licenses, forged resumes, and photographs of hospitals. One folder, titled Work Files, was a catalog of women. First names, shift times, apartment numbers, grocery preferences. Most were nurses. Some were missing. Each record ended with 2 words typed in red: moved on. 4 of those names matched unsolved disappearances stretching back 6 years. The pattern was too precise to dismiss. Marsh had been tracking healthcare workers, assuming their identities after they vanished, and using those identities to move freely from state to state. The missing nurse who made the 911 call wasn't new. She was another link in a chain that had been running for nearly a decade. Investigators pieced together Marsh's background: expelled from nursing school for falsifying logs, convicted of fraud in 2004, released 2 years later. Since then, he'd used more than a dozen aliases. His parents were deceased, no next of kin. He rented short-term housing near hospitals that needed emergency staff, staying just long enough to blend in before disappearing again. Receipts from his Akron alias led agents to a storage unit outside the city. Inside were plastic tubs labeled by year. Each held hospital badges, ID cards, and in one, a digital recorder wrapped in tape. When the audio was played, the room fell silent. A man's voice said evenly, "Say your name." A woman's voice, trembling, replied, "Emily Harper." Then a pause. "Good. You're Emily now." The door creaked, footsteps faded, and the recording cut. Acoustic testing placed it inside a residential structure with wood floors and distant road noise, the same conditions as the house on Brookvale Court. By mid-June, someone inside the FBI leaked details to local press. Headlines spread across Ohio. Federal agents probe suspected nurse imposter in Akron. Fear rippled through the hospitals. Female staff asked for escorts to their cars. Online, strangers dissected every rumor, some calling him a serial killer, others doubting he existed at all. At Quantico, analysts mapped his travel pattern. Each alias appeared 2 months after a nurse disappeared within a 100-mile radius. His movements drew a triangle across the Midwest: Toledo, Pittsburgh, Akron. Every city had a missing healthcare worker, Then, a week after the article ran, surveillance footage from a Dayton gas station surfaced. It showed Marsh at a pump, wearing a baseball cap, a duffel bag slung across his chest. In the passenger seat, a woman's silhouette flickered briefly under the overhead light. A hospital lanyard glinted against her jacket. The footage, time-stamped 2 days before the 911 call. Agents tracked the Camry to a storage facility near Cincinnati. The unit, registered under the alias Thomas Reed, contained yet another set of forged IDs and an open notebook. Inside were sketches of faces, mostly women in scrubs, and notes about schedules, hallways, elevators. The final page had a single red line: "The voice always calls back." At first, it made no sense, until technicians linked the 911 call itself to Marsh's burner phone. The call that night, the desperate voice gasping that someone wasn't breathing, had originated from inside the house, using his own device. He had been both caller and cause, reenacting the panic he'd once inspired in others. A test run, maybe, or a ritual. Back in Akron, investigators returned with luminol. Under ultraviolet light, the bathroom glowed faintly. Long streaks, diluted traces. The lab confirmed 2 DNA profiles. One matched Marsh, the other degraded but consistent with Margaret Hobbs. The silence in the command center that night was heavy. After months of speculation, they finally had evidence that tied him to a victim. News cameras camped outside the subdivision. Residents moved out temporarily. Rachel Price stopped answering her door. Reporters shouted questions at agents hauling boxes of evidence. The story had become national. An ordinary suburban house turned nexus of a decade-long nightmare. Within days, the FBI named Evan Marsh as a person of interest in multiple disappearances across Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The photo released showed a pale, clean-cut man in his 40s with a faint smile and eyes that didn't quite match the rest of his face. Tips flooded in. A motel clerk near Dayton said a guest resembling him paid cash for one night and left before dawn. Another caller from Kentucky claimed to see the same man at a truck stop, heading west. Each sighting pushed the map further out. The last confirmed trace came from a hospital in Cincinnati, where a new hire named Eric Benton had submitted paperwork identical in format to his previous aliases. By the time agents arrived, the locker was empty except for that notebook and the faint smell of bleach. No one knew where he had gone. But one fact was certain now. The man who'd lived quietly next door hadn't just been hiding. He'd been preparing. Somewhere between Ohio and Indiana, a new identity was already being written. And if history was any indication, another woman was about to disappear. Rain drifted over the interstate as the manhunt stretched into its second month. The FBI's field office in Cleveland became the nerve center, a maze of corkboards covered with mugshots, hospital rosters, and pins tracing Marsh's route like a map of infection. Agents slept in shifts. Local police stations received daily briefings. Every anonymous call, every sighting of a man buying scrubs, every report of someone new in hospital housing was logged, checked, and usually dismissed. But one tip from Indianapolis stood out. A motel clerk said a man had checked in under the name Daniel Rowe, driving an old Toyota with an Ohio plate. He stayed 2 nights, asked directions to a medical supply warehouse, and paid cash. When agents arrived, the room smelled faintly of disinfectant. Inside the trash, they found packaging from disposable gloves and a half-empty bottle of blue hair dye. On the table sat a receipt for a prepaid phone, activated the previous morning. That number pinged a tower 30 miles away near Terre Haute at 3:16 a.m. The signal was brief, just one call to a local nursing home. When agents traced the number, they found it belonged to the facility's overnight line. The call lasted 11 seconds. No one answered. 2 days later, the nursing home's night nurse, a 28-year-old named Kara Jenkins, didn't show up for her shift. Her car was still in the parking lot. Security footage showed her leaving at midnight, walking toward the side lot where staff usually parked. A figure followed her at a distance, head down, wearing a jacket and cap. The footage ended before she reached her car. By the time the sun came up, the FBI knew they had another abduction. The parallels were precise: nurse, night shift, isolated parking lot. Local news ran the headline, "Another nurse missing. Same pattern as Akron suspect." Reporters replayed clips of Marsh's photo until his face was everywhere. For the first time, the Bureau classified him publicly as a serial offender. While tactical teams searched rural Indiana, analysts pulled toll data from Marsh's old Camry. One transponder ping came from a small bridge crossing the Wabash River hours after Kara disappeared. Sheriff's deputies swept both sides of the embankment. Near the waterline, they found tire tracks and footprints leading into the brush. They also found something else, a cheap silver locket lying in the mud, its hinge snapped. Inside was a photograph of a woman, Margaret Hobbs, smiling in a nurse's uniform. That night, the FBI called Kara's parents. They had no answers, only the same hollow silence that dozens of families before them had endured. The next week, a farmer in western Indiana reported an abandoned car in his cornfield. It was the Camry. The plates were stripped and the seats had been removed. Forensic teams swept the interior, finding faint traces of blood in the carpet seams. The DNA matched both Marsh and Kara Jenkins. A black duffel bag in the trunk contained hospital scrubs, a forged ID for Kara Rowe, and a prepaid phone with recent calls to travel nurse agencies in Illinois. He wasn't running anymore. He was already setting up his next identity. The Bureau launched a multi-state alert. Posters went up in every hospital break room from Chicago to Louisville. Agents visited staffing agencies, warning managers to verify every credential. But they were always a few hours behind. Each time an Bishomath alias was flagged, it led to a vacancy recently filled by someone new who had already quit. It became clear Marsh had memorized the system, its blind spots, its hiring delays, the rhythm of desperation that made hospitals cut corners. He moved through the Midwest like static in a radio signal, invisible until he struck again. Inside the command room, Agent Michael Givens, who had led the original Akron search, stared at the photographs spread across the table. Margaret Hobbs, Emily Harper's false IDs, and now Kara Jenkins. 3 women in different years, all with the same brown hair and faint smile. He said quietly, "He's not killing to hide the evidence. The identities are the evidence." They began reconstructing Marsh's psychology through his recorded notes. His patients weren't random. They were nurses who had reported him, rejected him, or replaced him in previous contracts. He targeted women who reminded him of his lost credentials, of a professional life he believed had been stolen from him. By taking their names, he reclaimed what he thought he deserved. The Bureau requested a behavioral profile update from Quantico. The report described him as narcissistic, meticulous, transient, an individual whose sense of self is maintained only through the active use of another's identity. Translation: every time he stopped pretending, he started killing again. By late August, Marsh had been sighted near Springfield, Illinois, using the alias Eric Lane. A clerk remembered him buying a disposable phone and asking about local hospitals with short-term contracts. The description matched perfectly. Surveillance cameras at a nearby convenience store caught him on tape, the first clear image in months. He had shaved his head, gained weight, and now wore wire-frame glasses. But the eyes were the same, flat, rehearsed, calculating. Agents swarmed Springfield. They checked hospitals, hotels, and rental records. The trail went cold after 2 days. Then, a break. A nursing recruiter called the FBI tip line saying a man named Eric Lane had applied online that week, claiming to be a traveling RN licensed in Ohio and Indiana. His resume attached a scanned certificate signed Margaret A. Hobbs. It was the same forged document he'd used 9 years earlier. They traced the IP address to a public library computer 20 miles south of Springfield. When agents arrived, the computer was still logged into the email account. In the browser cache was a search query: how long before dental records expire after cremation? 3 nights later, a highway patrol officer spotted a man walking along Route 30 carrying a black bag. The officer pulled over, approached cautiously, and asked if he needed help. The man smiled, said his car had broken down. The officer offered a ride. The man hesitated, then agreed. Halfway through the drive, the officer received a dispatch alert. Be on the lookout for a suspect matching this description. Possible connection to federal case. The man beside him stiffened. Then, without warning, he lunged for the steering wheel. The patrol car veered, slammed into a ditch, and rolled. The officer survived with minor injuries. The suspect fled into the cornfields under cover of rain. By morning, the area was swarming with law enforcement. Drones scanned the rows from above. Bloodhounds picked up a scent trail leading toward a drainage culvert. Inside, they found the black duffel bag. It contained the same recorder as before, and a single Polaroid of a young woman tied to a chair, her eyes closed but alive. The handwriting on the back read, "She's next." No body was ever found in the area. The FBI declared a federal fugitive case. His face was everywhere. Billboards, TV, truck stops. Marsh became a ghost that people claimed to see in diners, gas stations, rest areas. Most tips were false. The real work happened quietly. Checking credential databases, tracking hospital background requests, watching for new employees with perfect paperwork and no past. Autumn crept across the Midwest. Weeks passed. Then a background check flag came from a small urgent care clinic in Missouri. A new hire's paperwork triggered an alert. The signature line read, E. Marsh, RN Supervisor. When agents arrived, the man was gone. He'd left behind only his locker key and a scrap of paper inside it. You found me once. You'll never find her. Forensic handwriting matched perfectly. By winter, the file reached 700 pages. Each page told a version of the same story. One man living behind faces that weren't his, moving like a virus through the gaps in bureaucracy. The media called him the borrowed nurse. The FBI's last official entry that year read simply, subject likely alive. Current identity unknown. Risk to public ongoing. Somewhere in the American heartland, someone new was clocking in under a fresh name, smiling for an ID photo. Their badge still warm from the printer, and the face on that badge looked familiar. Snow blanketed the Midwest in silence that winter, softening the edges of the story, but never burying it. The FBI's case file sat heavy on the desk in Cleveland, labeled with 3 words scrawled in marker: the borrowed nurse. For months there had been nothing. No confirmed sightings, no aliases surfacing in credential databases, no new disappearances that matched his pattern. The trail had gone cold. But then came an alert from a small-town hospital near Columbia, Missouri. The HR system flagged a new hire for irregular paperwork. The name was Ellen Myers, a traveling nurse contracted from Ohio. The photo ID showed a woman in her 30s, brown hair tucked neatly back, a small silver cross on her collar. She'd started 2 weeks earlier, assigned to overnight shifts. The hiring coordinator said her credentials checked out through a third-party service, but the social security number had 1 digit, transposed. Normally, that would have passed unnoticed. This time, because of a bureau-wide flag, it triggered a match. When the database compared Ellen Myers' photo with archived images of Evan Marsh, the facial recognition probability came back at 78%. Enough for probable cause. Agents boarded a flight to Missouri before sunrise. The hospital was small, 40 beds, mostly elderly patients, a few long-term rehab cases. Staff described the new nurse as quiet, efficient, polite. She volunteered for double shifts. No one had seen her without her surgical mask. When asked where she lived, co-workers said she rented a room in a farmhouse 5 miles outside town. She drove a gray pickup truck, older model, no plates on the front. Agents approached carefully, coordinating with local law enforcement. The farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel drive, lights on in one window. They waited until 2 a.m., then moved in silently. The truck was still warm. Inside the cab, they found a duffel bag, latex gloves, syringes, a prepaid phone. In the glove box, a folded driver's license read, Ellen Myers, but the photo showed Margaret Hobbs. They knocked. No response. A second knock, then a faint shuffle inside. The door opened halfway. A woman stood in scrubs, eyes hollow, hair tucked beneath a cap. Her voice was soft. "Can I help you?" The lead agent stepped forward. "Evan, it's over." She didn't move. For a second, the mask twitched, and a half-smile appeared beneath it. "I'm working," she whispered. Then she slammed the door. Agents forced entry. The farmhouse smelled of bleach and ammonia. In the living room stood a medical recliner, surrounded by IV stands and monitors. On the table, patient charts sat open. Names, medications, notes written in precise, tiny handwriting. Upstairs, they found a locked room. When they pried it open, a woman sat on the floor, wrists bound, eyes wide. She was alive. Her name was Kara Jenkins. She'd been missing for 7 months. Paramedics rushed her out under blankets while agents swept the rest of the house. In a dresser drawer, they found wigs, eyeglasses, and nursing badges with faces peeled off, laminate layers carefully removed with heat. On a nightstand sat a single Polaroid of Kara, taken the day she vanished, labeled "Property Transfer Complete." The farmhouse basement held rows of boxes, hospital forms, ID laminates, and a portable photo printer. Everything he needed to build new lives on demand. But Marsh himself, if it was truly him, was gone. A back window was open, curtain flapping in the wind, footprints leading out into the snow and across a frozen field. Agents followed the prints until they vanished at the tree line. Blood drops spotted the snow every few yards. They called in helicopters, infrared, dogs. Nothing. The temperature dropped below zero that night, and by morning, the tracks were gone. In the hospital where Kara recovered, she spoke haltingly to investigators. She said Marsh had posed as a recruiter, offering her better hours and housing. She woke up handcuffed in a room that smelled of antiseptic. He made her recite new names, telling her she was becoming them. He fed her, dressed her wounds, even played news reports on a small radio. He kept saying, she told agents, "You're helping people. You're helping me fix it." Her testimony filled in months of missing details. Marsh hadn't been killing for trophies. He was trying to rebuild an imagined medical career through stolen faces. Each victim was meant to replace a piece of his erased identity. Kara was supposed to be the final copy, the perfect version of his lost nurse persona. The FBI issued a national manhunt, extending into Canada and the upper Midwest. Every border station had his image, every staffing agency a warning notice. But no bank accounts moved, no fingerprints surfaced, no DNA hits appeared. It was as if the snow itself had swallowed him. Spring came. Kara began testifying in pre-trial hearings against unknown defendants, shell companies Marsh had used to forge credentials. The Bureau seized hundreds of fake nursing licenses and alerted hospitals across 8 states. But the man himself remained a phantom. In late April, a park ranger in Minnesota found a weathered bag half buried near a frozen lake. Inside were surgical tools, a driver's license for Ellen Myers, and a wallet photo of Margaret Hobbs. Forensics confirmed faint blood on the strap, matching Marsh's DNA. They assumed he'd succumbed to the cold after fleeing. Officially, the Bureau listed him as presumed deceased. Unofficially, nobody was certain. Because weeks later, in a hospital near Madison, Wisconsin, a new nurse checked in for her first shift under the name E. Myers. She wore a surgical mask, kept her voice low, and avoided eye contact. When the night supervisor reviewed her file, everything appeared legitimate. References, certifications, background checks. The signature at the bottom of the form was neat, steady, and unmistakable. It read, Evan M. If you liked this story, please subscribe to the channel for more true crime mysteries.